All right, today on Greedy Pig Podcast, we have special guest Will Marshall, owner of Marshall Fitness.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, thanks for being here,
Yeah.
Will.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on.
yeah, absolutely. This is great. I love being a guest on podcasts because anymore I don't really get to do that. Like I facilitate all the podcasts, and so anytime I get to be a guest, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, definitely easier to answer the questions sometimes, right?
It is. It's way easier. Yeah, I can just get to talk
I
as
feel
much
like
as I want.
I feel like it's almost harder to be the guest.
You think?
I feel like we kind of just feed you questions and you talk. The guest talks a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. My girlfriend tells me I'm a really good talker, so I guess I am. But I mean, I can go for days, especially when it comes to fitness and all that stuff. So and entrepreneurship.
sure, yeah.
Two fun topics. So getting into that, what exactly is Marshall Fitness for those watching at home?
So I'm an online coach, personal trainer, and basically what that means is you have the contrast with in-person training where people go work with a trainer for an hour, 1 to 2 to 4 times a week if they want to. I did that at the very beginning when I started, and I realized pretty early on that even 2 sessions back to back was exhausting. Mostly because like I'm, setting up the weights for everybody. I'm counting the reps. Like I'm just, I got to be mentally on because they're paying me for that hour.
You're the leader.
I'm there. And I had this thought, and I was like, if I'm doing this for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, I'm gonna be burnt.
Yeah,
sure.
And so, I'd always been aware of this online coaching thing, but I never understood how it works because I'm like, how is it possible that people are getting results and not seeing a trainer? And then a couple things happened. I was coming back from Philadelphia. I was visiting some old teammates, and I was listening to this podcast. It was called Barbell Shrugged. And it was just a fitness podcast. And they had this guy on there named John Goodman. And he's the founder of the Online Trainer Mentorship, which teaches personal trainers how to start their own online fitness business. And they had a self-paced course that was, pretty easy, like, price-wise. And it was self-paced. And I was like, that's the thing I got to do. It's funny because I can tell you the moment, like I'm on the turnpike and I'm like, that's the thing.
It's the light bulb moment.
Yeah. So I did that, and then a month later I got my first client, former teammate of mine from Pitt, and this is during the pandemic, like the heat of the pandemic, and we're playing Call of Duty every day, OG Warzone.
Oh yeah.
That's all we did because we had nothing else to do. And I was telling him, I'm like, I'm taking this online, and he's like, I'll be your first client. And so then right away, got my first client. 3 months later, I mean, he's jacked. Like his wife is texting me like, hey man, like, thanks. Like, you looked awesome.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
That's some social proof right there.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You just need the first one. And so I got that one. I got a second one shortly after who also did really, really well. And then from there, it just, I've been in it for 4 years now. And it wasn't something that I was never going to get 20 clients like off the rip like that. Like it was going to be something that was a slow build. But, now I have 24 clients. And what I do for them is I create their programming. So everything they do in the gym, every time they're there, I handle their nutrition, and that can look different depending on the person.
It's customizable.
Yeah, a lot of people just need education about how to eat. I think anymore when I talk about it, I'm like, yeah, it's simple, And then I go around to around my friends or whatever, and I hear the things that they say about how they eat, and I'm like, holy shit, like they're like, that's not what you do.
It's also, I feel like it's funny. Some people think they're doing it the right way,
Yes.
and they're not. It's
Yeah.
like they're convinced I'm doing it right. Like it's
Yeah.
almost better to have someone that has no idea,
Yeah.
and you can at least say, hey, you should be doing this.
Yeah,
But
blank slates are the easiest.
Sure.
Yeah, and so I give them a lot of information, a lot of education on what they should be doing, and then I check in with them every week. So every Monday they fill out a check-in form. I send them a video responding to their, what they've put in their check-in as feedback, and then I get on calls with all my clients once a month or as needed. And so I'm with them along the way. I always tell people, I might not be with you, but I'm looking over your shoulder the entire time. They log everything through an app, so every time they do something, I get a notification that they're doing it. And at the end of the day, it is more cost-effective, too, because in-person personal training, you could see anywhere from 75 to 200 an hour, depending on where you are. And that's only for an hour of time,
Sure.
And so it becomes pretty expensive pretty quickly when you need 4 days a week to see the results. And then again, you're not even talking about the nutrition or anything outside the lifestyle stuff, and so I'm able to have a lot more influence over what people do, all from, never seeing them in person.
plus, I feel like just the kind of day and age, especially after the pandemic, like everything's online, like even doctors, psychiatrists, stuff like that. Like everything seems to be that kind of virtual. So it's a win-win, and this just seems the way the world's going now.
Yeah, I mean, I have way more time to devote to clients, and then I also have time for myself, which is awesome. Like I never wanted to be. I read the 4-Hour Work Week during the pandemic, Tim Ferriss, and I was like, I got to do something like that. I got to get some time back, And I mean, I'm definitely not working 4 hours a week, but I'm not working 40, and I'm able to do all I need to do, and people are doing really, really well, and it's awesome.
So what was the hardest part from transitioning with in-person coaching to going online?
I think for a period of time there, it was because I still do run into some resistance where people are like, I need an in-person trainer. Like, I need someone waiting on me. And I just made an Instagram reel about this like 2 weeks ago because someone said the same thing. I've had a few people recently tell me that. And it's getting people to understand that, like, what that really means. If you need someone to be waiting on you all the time, how are you going to do that for the next 4 decades?
Sure.
It's not going to happen, And, like, schedules change. Trainers move away. People move away. People have crazy jobs. I mean, that's another big thing. A lot of the online clients I have, whether they're nurses working night shift or, just don't have time to have the same time scheduled out throughout the week to meet someone in person. So what I aim to do is give people the tools to be able to succeed after me. And then that's where it really has the value, where they can then, go and I mean, it's really mentorship at the end of the day. They can then go and take what they've learned and then continue to succeed in their own way.
So what's the most dramatic change you've seen with a client?
Oh, I love that question because I've got somebody right now. Are you guys familiar with Gilbert Funeral Homes? There's one.
I feel like I've heard the name, but
there's one in Little Boston and there's one in White Oak, right on Lincoln Highway.
Okay.
And so Ian Gilbert is one of my clients right now. He went to Sarah. I don't know where he's from. Like, he's from the McKeesport, White Oak, Elizabeth area. And so I've known him for a long time. And I want to say, I bring up his story because it's top of mind, and he's been a huge success lately. And I don't want to necessarily take anything away from anybody else, but there are certain stories where people have had a lot to overcome, and he's one of those people. He was just on our podcasts, not the most recent, but the one before that, and he told his story. And so I've known him for a long time. He went to Sarah with my brother. They were in the same class. And a couple years ago, I think it was 2021, he was in the hospital. He got put on the ventilator from COVID. And at the time, he was like around 380 pounds. And he came to me last year. He just finished up a whole year with me at 360 with a goal of getting under 300. Mm-hmm. And about 2 months ago, it was like the weekend of his birthday, he sent me a text and was like, hey, man, I'm not going to hit, 300 this weekend. And then I'm like, I was disappointed, but I was like, I know it's coming. Yeah. And then he sends me another text right after. He's like, I smashed it. And he sends me a picture of 297 on the scale.
Nice.
That's awesome.
And it's just been such a crazy journey. I mean, it's been super successful. There's been, with everything, there's bumps on the road, but to have that story and where it starts, and then to see where he is now, like, it's incredible. And I mean, he's told me, like, he's flat out told me, he's like, you've changed my life, and that's never not wild to hear.
Yeah.
And
kind of the reason you do it, right?
It is. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like, I don't always get to hear those types of things. When I do, it's like a nice reminder, because there are days where I'm like, I don't know, sometimes I get burnt out. Sometimes, you have the doubt, but then you hear things like that, and it's like,
keeps you going.
Yeah, that's why.
Plus, like, that situation, the post-medical kind of condition or, event, I feel like a lot of people, like, once they kind of, maybe break their arm or break their leg or whatever it may be, like, I feel like that's when they kind of really fall off.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do anything anymore.
Right.
But to kind of bounce back from that and then obviously smash his goal, and I'm sure he's continuing doing it and will drop even further. But
yeah,
that's
he
awesome.
just signed up for a second year, and he's signed up for a half marathon in May.
Oh, jeez.
That's awesome.
Good for him.
It's great to see stuff like that.
We ran his first 5K. We did the Boston Trail 5K. Mm-hmm. And, I ran mine. Like, I told him, I was like, I'm going to do my thing. Like, I'm going to try and PR my time, but I'll come back for you. And I walked down the trail, and I caught him, and I said, and he said to me, he was like, dude, I'm hurting right now. And I was like, you can walk, you set your pace, but we're going to finish this, like, we're gonna run through this finish line. And there were pictures at the end. It was always people waiting for him. It was sick. It was one of the coolest moments.
Nice. So I was looking at your marketing and everything. It seems like you focus a lot on former athletes that want to get back into shape. So I know you said you played soccer for Pitt. Did you ever go through a period of time where you got out of shape after college and that now you stayed in shape the whole time?
No. And the reason that those are the people I talk to is because what I've found over the years being out of college is that you have people take one of two paths. You have the path that I took, where people stay fit or they find a way to funnel that, competitive nature into something else. And that's what I did. Like, I knew when I was in college playing soccer, like, I found the weight room at Pitt because I had to be there all the time. And I knew I was like, this is what I will be doing after. And so there was never really a slowdown for me in that sense. But then the opposite of that is, athletes, especially in a place like Pitt, Division I, ACC, everything is structured for you. You know when you're going to be at training. You know when you're in the weight room. Now they have, nutrition set up. Like, there's no room to fail because the support is there.
So now they have so much flexibility and freedom.
Yeah. You graduate, that's gone. And so then a lot of people don't know how to then apply that to their regular life. You get a job. You might be working a 9 to 5. It's a very different schedule. And so then I talk to those people. And I just had somebody today I had a call with who was a swimmer at St. Vincent. She sent me this big paragraph, and I was like, that is exactly who I'm talking to. I told her, I was like, you are the person that I'm writing these posts for. And, I mean, that's what my marketing is, targeted at, but there's a lot of people that, aren't former athletes. Like, I would say 75% of the clients that I've worked with wouldn't describe themselves as former athletes.
Do you think when working with former athletes, are they sometimes more difficult to work with than other people just because they have the background? They think maybe things need to be done a certain way and maybe have more of an ego when it comes to being coached?
Sometimes. There are people that think, and it's not even really specific to former athletes. It can be, but there are definitely some people who know things maybe over the years that they've learned, and they don't want to necessarily be told that they're wrong. I mean, I had a client who he was like, I want to see more of my abs. I need more core work. And I'm like, well, that's not how that works. You need to have less body fat in that area to then, see your abs. And I mean, I was like, I'm not going to get in an argument with this guy. I mean, he hired me for a reason, but like, he's not ready to hear it from me yet, And so I just, gave him some core work. It didn't happen the way that he thought it was going to happen, but you have to pick and choose those things sometimes. Like, is that really going to, is me having that conversation with him and potentially, making him feel like he's being reprimanded going to help the relationship that we have? Probably not. And so then eventually when he's ready to hear it, I'll tell him, but you
pick
have to,
your battles.
Yeah, you've got to determine when the right time is.
I also feel like with athletes, I mean, at least my experience, like the kind of more, you can be more direct with them and like, kind of drill sergeant ish instead of like, I feel like some people like that aren't in the like team sports or sports in general, you can't be like, I don't want to say coddle them, but be a little more gentle with them because they'll, exactly. They never had a coach before. So like, every athlete has had a coach yelling at them before.
Believe me, I would love to be able to just be like that with everybody because that's how I am with other people. Like when I was coaching in soccer, like that's how it is. Coaching in the pros, coaching at the Division I level, like that's how it goes. That's how people have always coached me. I mean, I'm very much of the notion that I think, the majority of people could do well if they harden up a bit, but not everyone's ready to hear that either, So it's that's just part of being a coach.
Yeah, you have to be kind of read the room.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to know the individual.
Yeah,
What,
sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, what's like the kind of onboarding process? So say someone's like sign up, like is it just like a form? Did you get on a call, kind of discuss like their goals, or like how do you go from they want to be a client to actually starting like their program?
Yeah, it depends. So I send a lot of DMs to anybody that interacts with my content, whether they're potentially interested in being a client or not. And that's just a lot of it's marketing because I start relationships with people. I mean, that's what we're doing right here. I might talk to you guys, and then you might run into somebody down the road that's like wants what I offer, and you're like, I know the guy, right? So I have it set up on my website where if people want to contact me, there's a form where it's just, what are your goals? What are you looking to get out of working with a coach? And there's some people that just go route one and just send me a message and they're like, hey, I want to I'm interested. And then we have a conversation, and then from there it's like a 15-minute Zoom call, and then we just talk over some things, see if it'd be a good fit, and then from there, if it is a good fit or potentially a good fit, then we do like a 45-minute Zoom call where I really that's like the sales process.
Sure.
Gotcha. So as far as lead generation goes, is most of your clients coming from Instagram and then like warm outreach? So you said people that interact with your content, message you directly too, or do you run any paid ads in addition to that?
No, I've done the paid ads thing. I did it in 2023, 22, and I did Google ads. I've done Facebook ads. There's a lot of people that love to say online coaching is saturated. I don't think it is, but ads for online coaching, that is saturated. Because it's so hard to, differentiate yourself from other coaches because everyone's offering the same thing. And most of the time, people come to me after they've known me for a bit or they know somebody else that's worked with me.
Okay.
I have had people here and there that have found me on Google. There's a guy from White Oak that found me on Google, believe it or not. And, I've set up all the SEO stuff, like it's there, but at the end of the day, it's all Instagram, Facebook, and then word of mouth.
Which is a lot of times the best way to get clients because they're already warm. It's an engaged audience.
Yeah.
So when you're making your content, what kind of content do you usually create that attracts the most clients or you find that your audience really responds to?
Most people respond to results.
Makes sense.
That's usually the biggest thing. I remember when I was working for the Riverhounds at the time, and I was still pretty early into the game where I was like, this is actually going to be a real thing for me. And it was one of my first clients that wasn't somebody that I knew personally, and he sent me, pictures of himself after 12 weeks, and I was so stoked about it because I was like showing everybody. I'm like, yo, this is gold. Like
That's what you're looking for.
This is what I need, right? And so I go through. I have I run a launch model. So May, September, and January, I do a launch, which is basically just I create content that's posted for a week straight, and it's all. This is all I've learned this through the mentorship that I'm in. But you talk about who you're looking for, the problems that they face, and then there's usually a post in there of success stories of recent clients, and then people are just kind of like getting hit with that all week, and then it stays top of mind. And then usually the timing of the year, you'll get people that have been either if they missed it in May or they missed it in September, then January, and I have a lead sheet where I've tracked the people that I've talked to since 2021, and I'm DMing them every 3 months, just being like, hey, how you doing? Like even if they're not clients,
just checking in.
It might be a 2-year process when someone becomes a client. Like I've had people that the guy I was referring to about the abs, like he reached out to me in 2021 and he was like, yeah, this isn't right for me. And then 3 years later he messaged me again. He didn't even know that I was the same person actually.
Oh really?
Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure we've talked before. And then I sent him a text and the old texts were there. He was like, oh, we have talked. And
you're that ab guy, huh?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
He didn't have the abs until he signed up 3 years later.
And those people tend to be pretty easy to get on board because so much time has passed, and then you find like, well, okay, we're having this conversation again. You gotta do something.
Is there any time where you talk to a client and you don't think they're a good fit for the program and you turn down the business?
I have before, yeah. Sometimes I will say in the beginning that was not something I did as often because in the beginning, you're just trying to get it out. You want clients.
You're hustling.
You got to bring people in. And now that I have the amount of people that I have, there have been people that, it was just in May. I had a call with somebody who, they're telling me their story and they had some like issues with their neck and just different things. And I was like, I don't really think this makes sense because you need to go see like a doctor, like I don't think I'm
yeah, you need like physical therapy, not like a gym.
Yeah. And weirdly enough, there's a lot of people that come to me as a trainer that have like medical issues that think that I can like help, which being more fit is going to help with mostly anything. But I've had people reach out to me like, hey, can you help me with my like A1C levels, like that are like pre-diabetic? And I'm like, that's not what I do.
Yeah.
being more fit can help, but I can't do that. You know, like, I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a dietitian. I mean, I was like, I can help you get in the gym. I can help you eat better, but like, I cannot specifically treat that. And then those types of people, like, I mean, at this point, I know so many people now who are registered dietitians or, you know, maybe physical therapists or doctors or whatever, and I'll say, like, hey, like, here's the info for a dietitian. You should talk to them. And then, you know, down the road, if everything gets solved and you still want to get in the gym, we can have that conversation.
Yeah, that's a great way to do business. I mean, being honest up front, and then I'm sure a lot of people will come to you in the future too.
Yeah, I mean, I had a guy one time, I told him it wasn't a good fit, and he was just like, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate the honesty, because I know that you're not just trying to sell me, like, you're actively looking out for my best interest. And at the end of the day, I mean, yeah, it's not a client, it's not a sale, but it does, in the long run, it does what it's supposed to do.
Plus, if they became a client, they probably weren't going to be one for long, right? Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, they need something else.
Exactly. So what's like the biggest mistake you see people making that causes them to get out of shape? Obviously, there's like eating and stuff, but if there's anything that you've noticed that maybe other people might overlook when it comes to fitness?
I think with nutrition by itself, I think people don't have a strong idea of what that really needs to look like in order to maintain fitness. Because even going back to like that other path that, you know, former athletes take, athletes are so active and they don't even have to think about it because they're just playing their sport the whole time, and that takes care of the activity part, you know. And they don't realize after they stop playing the sport that their activity level goes to, you know, borderline zero. And, you know, a lot of the time people just need more movement, and they need to, you know, eat less, but you can get away with eating more when you're more active. And I think without knowing, you know, what your intake is, and honestly just where to begin in the gym, you know, there's still a lot of people that think that they need to spend 3 hours on a treadmill to lose weight. And like, that sucks. Like, I'm not a proponent of that at all. I mean, yeah, could you do it? Sure, but it's not going to be fun.
You're going to get burned out real fast.
Yeah, it's miserable. And that's a lot of the time what people want is they want to get toned, you know. And then I'll say, well, what does that mean? You know, what do you mean by that? Because toning by itself as a process is not a thing. Like, the idea that you can, you know, lift light weights to tone up and lift heavy weights are going to make you bulky. Like, I mean, women all the time say, I mean, women and men, but it's specifically more common with women to say, I don't want to get bulky. I'm like, it's not going to happen to you on accident. I mean, by the same logic, I've been lifting for 10 years. I shouldn't be able to fit through a door, you know, if that's how that worked, you know. And so I think the fear of bulking up is so weirdly prevalent, and it's just not even close to being a possibility.
I never even like thought about that until I think it was Joe Rogan or some podcast, but he mentioned something like that, and he said that's a big reason. And they're like, why don't you just worry about like becoming average before you worry about, you know,
becoming
getting
the
huge,
best in the world.
bodybuilder.
How hard it is, right?
Yeah,
you know, it's like
and
guys who do this for their whole lives.
And like you
can't
said,
achieve
like,
these
you know,
results.
that's all you do for 10 years, and you know, you're still, you know, you're in shape, but you're able to fit through the door.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 5'8", 175. Like, I'm not, like, people wouldn't look at me and be like, oh, that dude's really fit. And I mean, I am, like, relatively speaking, but with that same logic, I mean, it's like saying, like, you don't want to drive because you're afraid you're going to turn into a NASCAR driver. You know, it's just not going to happen.
That's a cool one.
It's just not how it works.
Why do you think there are so many myths and lies in the fitness industry, from, you know, food fads to like getting bulky from lifting weights for women?
Because it's a mess. It's just such a mess. And there's I think a large piece of it is there's people out there looking to capitalize on the lack of knowledge that the general public has, and they do, and they make money from it. But is what they're doing creating healthy relationships with exercise and nutrition? No. I mean, there's people, like, the carnivore diet is like all the rage right now. You know, people are talking about it left and right, and the people that are even promoting the carnivore diet aren't even doing it anymore, because they're like, I mean, there's a guy, Paul Saladino, he's Carnivore MD on Instagram.
Okay.
He's the guy that goes into the grocery store and picks up something. He's like, seed oils, like, don't eat this. And people see that and they have like a visceral reaction to it, and they're like, oh my God, I've been eating that my whole life, I need to stop. And then you have those people that hear that and they just like kind of like tack on to the rest of what he's saying, and then they're like, oh, I've got to do carnivore if I want to lose body fat and build muscle. And that guy himself stopped doing the carnivore diet because he was seeing like adverse effects, like just not, he wasn't feeling good, and so he stopped doing it. And I mean, it's been over the years. I mean, we had Atkins in the 2000s, you know, with low carb, and yeah, that could be a way to get you where you want to be. But at the end of the day, like, it's not really the carbs that's doing it. You're just cutting out a major food group and eating way less than you were before because you removed a large portion of the macronutrients that you were taking in. And I mean, I was a victim to that per se. I mean, I did the paleo diet when I was in college, and
what is that exactly?
So that's it's also known as the caveman diet. So the idea is that you only eat what was available to humans like over like 100,000 years ago. So you're talking meat, vegetables, fruit, nuts, seeds, oils, nothing refined, nothing processed. If it comes in a box, basically it's a no-go. Can't even eat rice, like no potatoes. Sweet potatoes were the only real carb source. That was a starch. And I did that. My whole family did it, which made it really easy. And I got ripped up. Like, I went from 14% body fat to 8.5 in a summer.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was for soccer. But then I went back to school, wasn't living at home, and I was like, there's just no way I can do this. You know, my mom was at the store at like 4 times a week buying food because we were just going through all of it.
Well, that's the big thing, like the sustainability of it, right? Like,
yeah. I mean,
if you had a private chef, it'd be really easy, but
it'd be super easy, right? But it's just not. That's not real life for the vast majority of people. And when I did that, the paleo diet, I'm like, oh, so this is the thing. Like, I need to eat whole foods, and that's why I lost all this body fat. And I remember I told that to one of my coaches at Pitt, and he was like, no, you just ate less for a long time. And then light bulb went off, and that's when I started to, like, you know, really start to figure out, okay, what is it exactly that's going on? And now, to me, it's very simple. But there's still, like we were talking about, there's people that see things like that, and they're like, oh, well, no, I can't eat carbs because this person said I shouldn't. And then there you have it. So it's like it's just an ongoing journey of, like, almost unlearning and learning again and figuring out ultimately what works best. There's plenty of people that could do, you know, if paleo works for you, I say do it. You know, I don't tell anybody they have to do a specific type of diet ever. It's like, what's going to be the thing that you can do and follow for a long period of time? That's what you should do. And if that's paleo or, you know, intermittent fasting, awesome, do it. But you don't have to do it in order to see the results that you want.
Yeah, I was a victim of the intermittent fasting.
Yeah,
and
I did it too.
That is not sustainable at all for me.
No, I did that in college also in my 5th year. And I did it mostly as an experiment. I just wanted to see, because there's all these buzzwords with intermittent fasting too, like autophagy, and like your cells are going to, you know, replace themselves.
Yeah, you kill the bad ones.
Yeah, right. And I did it. And the thing with intermittent fasting is, like, yeah, you shrink the eating window, right? So most people do, like, they'll only eat between 12 to 8, and that's what I did. But the thing is if you're changing your eating window and still eating the same amount that you were eating prior to restricting that window, nothing's going to change because you're still taking in the same amount of food.
Well, the crazy one is, you know, obviously, like you said, there's that window. I mean, I've read, like, people eat, maybe 4 days a week and don't
take one day off.
And it was like, you don't eat for 2 days, like, you know, not back to back, but like for 24 hours straight, you don't eat. Like, that kind of seems like that can't be good for you. But I mean, hey, I don't know.
Yeah, there's a study from a few years ago of a guy who ate, or he didn't eat apparently for like it was a long extended period of time. I think he had like some level of, I mean, he was taking like a multivitamin, like there might have been some protein shakes in there, but I mean, like the whole thing was he fasted for a long time, and he lost like 200 pounds. I feel like there's probably more to it than that, but ultimately you're eating less, so it is going to work eventually. There's another one too. There's a guy from, I think it was Northern Illinois. This is a very popular one. He was a professor, and he ate like Twinkies, Doritos, and Oreos for 3 months. And that's what you see in the headlines. He also drank protein shakes. He took vitamins. And, I mean, he lost 24 pounds. Like, all of his biomarkers went down to healthy levels. And the point of it was to show that it's not about what you eat. It's how much you eat. And, I mean, again, like, Doritos are not nutrient dense. Like, you're not going to get your vitamins from that like you would from Whole Foods. But at the end of the day, if you're eating less, like, you're going to drop body fat.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get that with being able to drop actual weight, calories in versus calories out. But do you think you can build an actual, like, good-looking physique eating stuff like that?
Well, that's where the protein's going to come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so at the end of the day, if you're eating more than you're burning, you're in a calorie surplus. You're going to gain in some fashion. And if you're eating less than you're taking in, you're in a deficit. So you're gonna burn fat. Now, if you're not on your game with protein and strength training, eventually you're gonna run into muscle loss, which that happens with. I've had some people that have come to me and said, I've been running miles a day for the last 5 years or so, and I'm skinny fat. I'm like, well, you're not gonna build arms on the treadmill, and so those people, you're gonna lose fat, but you're not gonna be that defined tone look that people want. And so there's a way to be in a calorie deficit, and as long as you're taking in the adequate amount of protein and strength training, like your body will hold on to muscle. And so now a lot of people that I work with, they kind of hit it from both sides. They're strength training, they're increasing their overall activity, they're staying in a calorie deficit, eating protein, and then over time, that's where you see that body recomposition where, less fat, more muscle in the same period of time. That's also beginner gains too. Like, people that are just starting out can see crazy changes in a very short period of time because their body's not used to that stimulus, and it almost overcompensates for that stimulus, and then that's where you see like massive changes. But someone like me, being 10 years in, I'll never see that level of change ever again unless I take like a year off.
Makes a lot of sense. So what do you think is more important for, say, somebody that wants to lose weight that's bigger, lifting or cardio, if they could only choose one?
Lifting.
Lifting?
Yeah. There's some information out there that, from what I understand, there's nothing that I've seen that's made me change my mind, but the more muscle you have, the easier it is to have less body fat and ultimately keep it off. You hear stories about people that will lose 100 pounds and then gain 100 pounds and lose 100 pounds again. Like, I know somebody, like, personally that does that, like, often. And, when they lose the weight, they do it through, eating less and then lots of cardio. And it works, but then the issue is like, muscle acts as like a buffer against that gain back.
Or is it because, like, there's now a higher, what do they call it, like, maintenance calorie intake?
Yeah, like your metabolic rate becomes higher. And I don't know the exact science off the top of my head, but essentially when you have more muscle, your body needs to burn more calories at rest. Mm-hmm. And so then it increases your metabolic rate in order to then, prevent that weight gain from coming back.
That makes sense, yeah. I thought you would have said the cardio, but now it kind of makes sense.
Cardio in addition is fine. Like, there's the people that I have that are, like, solely focused on weight loss. Like, they're prioritizing strength training, but they're also doing, like, they're just walking on a treadmill also. Their workouts will be, they're in the gym, they're lifting, but then at the end they're doing some type of cardio. And I always tell them too, like, if you want to do anything additional, do it. Like, any additional running, walking is going to only be more helpful to move the needle. But you don't need to, like, I have someone that just signed on that was like, I need to get into my cardio routine. I'm like, that's fine, but make sure you're hitting these lifts. Like, you need to lift. It's not all about the cardio. I understand that you've had success with cardio in the past, but look where we're at right now. Like, now you're back. You're back to where you were. So a healthy combination of both is great. Like, they say cardio is great for your heart, and all those, kind of biomarkers, like things you see on like a blood test, but strength training is what's going to do it for body composition.
Makes sense. With your clients, do they typically have a harder time getting into the gym and lifting, or is the diet the bigger issue, or just do you see a combination with both?
It's mostly diet, because that requires the most lifestyle change, because that's outside the gym. There have been people that struggle to get to the gym, usually in the beginning, especially if they're new. I had a client about 6 months ago now. She signed up for 6 months, and she texted me day one in a panic because she was in the gym and couldn't find the kettlebells. And I called her right away, and she was crying. Oh. And she was just like, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know where anything is. I was like, listen, I know. She was at the Planet Fitness in North for Sales. The kettlebells are right in the back. Just take your time. No one's looking at you. It's fine. Like, you're good. And then she never missed a workout after that. And there's a saying, you know, the heaviest weight in the gym on day one is the front door, because
I never heard that one.
getting in there is the hardest part, because people have all these preconceived notions about the gym. They think it's all meatheads and, you know, people that are like judging them, which you might get one person out of 100 that's going to be like, you know, that type of person in the gym. But more often than not, the people that are like the meatheads that have been there for decades,
they're supportive.
They're the best people.
Yeah.
Those are the people you want to know.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a client today who said, you know, she's been with me for a year. She was like, yeah, I just realized that I'm someone that people recognize in the gym now, because she's been there so consistently for the past year. And I said 6 months ago, I was like, you're going to be running that place soon, and look at you now.
That's awesome. Someone played this where, like, you kind of said that nutrition is usually harder than going to the gym. Well, like, the gym's 2 hours a day or hour and a half, where the diet's 24 hours
it's all the
every
time.
day.
Yeah.
What are the foods that you see in people's diets that absolutely crush them with their goals?
The big one is going to be, it's usually alcohol. And, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't drink, because I do.
Yeah.
And I've come to, I mean, I think everyone at times hates it. The next day they hate it, you know. But with alcohol specifically, like, it's like the hidden macronutrient, you know, because carbs and protein, you know, per gram, 4 calories, fat, 9 grams per calorie, alcohol is 7 grams per calorie. And, you know, more often than not, if you go to any bar and you're getting anything that's like a cocktail, like, you're potentially taking down like 200 to 300 calories in one drink. And the other part of it, too, is that whenever you drink and you eat food at the same time, your body's going to prioritize metabolizing the alcohol first, because it's a toxin, you know, and so the body's like, we got to get this out of here. And so then what can happen is when you eat, all that food that you eat gets put on the back burner and can be likely stored as excess energy and or body fat. So, again, I don't tell anybody not to drink. I tell everybody the less you drink, the faster that the process is going to go. I also understand that in our society it is ingrained heavily.
Especially with these holidays coming up.
Right, in everything that we do. Yeah. And so it's figuring out how to manage that also. You know, like, if it means, you know, vodka, waters, tequila and water, like, that's probably the lowest calorie drink that you can drink. And then just figuring out when you're going to do it. You know, I had a client, a guy he was from McKeesport, actually, Border Patrol out in San Diego. He was logging his food, and he logged like 8 Budweisers or something on like a Wednesday night. And I texted him, I was like, hey, what are you doing, you know? And he was like, oh, it's my Friday. And I was like, okay, you know, fair. Like, I get it. Like, every now and then you want to let it rip. That's cool. But that's the education piece. Like, people then, you know, I have the conversation with him, and I have resources for all this stuff where I'm just saying, you can do it, but you just have to understand what it means, like what it is going to do to the whole process. You know, if you continue to just kind of keep it as is, you know, like, if you're steady 4 to 5 drinks on the weekend, like, that is going to slow you down over time. So if that means, you know, cutting it down to 1 to 2, like, that's going to be helpful. But again, I understand not everyone's going to cut it out completely.
Is there a specific alcohol that you find to be the worst for people trying to make gains? I would think beer off the top of my head.
Usually, yeah. It just depends on the calorie intake. It all comes down to drinking your calories. You know, you could say the same thing about like Dunkin' Donuts and people that get the
coffee,
yeah,
like
frappuccinos.
Yes, exactly. Like Starbucks. I mean, if you ever look at what's in like a like what was it, white chocolate mocha?
Yeah,
you're talking like 500 calories in like a what is it, like a tall white chocolate mocha.
Yeah, I'd rather have a Guinness at that point.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my.
Well, that's the thing.
Guinness.
People are like, oh, it's just coffee. It's not bad. Well, yeah, like black coffee is fine, but like when you add, like, it becomes a milkshake. That's why actually I don't drink coffee, because I don't like the taste. So if I do want to drink it, a couple pumps of sugar and some milk, it becomes like a dessert.
I like the Nitro Cold Brew Black, honestly.
I can't
don't like
black.
having dessert for breakfast. I don't know, everybody's different.
But even back with like the cocktail you talked about, I feel like I think we were on an airplane going to Cancun, and George ordered like it was cranberry and gin or something. The little bottle of cranberry juice had more than like a Coke or a Pepsi.
Yeah, it was like 60 grams of sugar in that little thing. Sugar, so I just drank the gin and put it in the water.
And you could easily get like, you know, light or like with 0 sugar, but they get the cranberry juice cocktail, and it's just loaded up with that sugar.
Yeah, I mean, it adds up really quickly. And I mean, alcohol by itself it's all the same at the end of the day. Like, it all has, 7 calories per gram. It just depends on what the mixers are, really. And, like, beers, too, like, light beers, my dad drinks the, like, the Miller Lite, like, the extra light. And it's, every company likes to market, like, oh, well, there's 2 grams of carbs. And it's like, well, that doesn't matter because the alcohol is what supplies the calories. There's never going to be a 0-calorie alcoholic beverage because it's not possible. So the lightest stuff tends to be the most calorie friendly just because it has less alcohol. But like an IPA or like, a Southern Tier Golden Monkey that's
Pumpkin,
10%.
yeah,
those are going to be heavy. Like, you're talking 200 calories per,
it's like a snack.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's.
But plus, you never usually just drink one, or most people don't, right?
Yeah,
So,
man,
so you look back at, like you said, the 8 Miller Lights. I mean, that's
adds up.
Yeah, that's 100,000 calories.
Yeah, yeah. And then if you're talking a regular day of eating there, you're potentially putting yourself into like 1,000 calorie surplus pretty quickly.
And one surprising thing that I found out, years ago, but with Guinness, that's my favorite beer. It's actually not that bad for you compared to a lot of beers. But people think, oh, you're drinking that dark syrup and stuff. It's like 120 calories or something for a can.
It's very, very light for a dark beer. I recently got into Guinness.
It's the easiest one to chug, right?
Yeah.
I mean, compared to other stouts, like, it's not. I mean, some stouts you gotta let that marinate. You're not slamming some of these stouts, but Guinness is easy, man. It's super easy.
Exactly. That's something I didn't think of when first looking at it.
I think you got on a lot quicker than I did, and I thought the same thing. I was like, that's a pretty dark beer, man. Like, I don't know about that, but yeah, it's definitely it's different than what it looks like, we'll say.
For sure.
But back to some of the more cons of alcohol. I know, like, the calorie intake. You know more than me on this topic, but I heard it also affects muscle growth. So when you're lifting and you drink, it affects the recovery and the muscle synthesis.
Yeah. So, I mean, with the recovery process in general, you guys familiar with Oura Rings?
No.
So what about Whoop? You ever heard of that?
I've heard of that, yeah.
So it's just a wearable, like a, fitness tracker, you could say. I mean, similar to like an Apple Watch or a Fitbit, but these are, an Apple Watch is designed to be a watch that does all kinds of different stuff. I mean, these are specifically designed for recovery, tracking your heart rate and all that. And I got this about 2 years ago, and one of the things I love to see but also hate to see is after I drink, like, my resting heart rate, the way this works is it figures out the trends of, like, your body. So you wear it for the first 2 weeks, and it's not going to tell you anything until you've worn it for a bit because it has to learn, what you do and who you are. And my resting heart rate overnight can be anywhere from 38 to 40 beats per minute. Like, it's pretty low. I've been flagged at the doctors.
It's pretty healthy,
It's ridiculous.
That's true athlete, though.
Yeah, so, but when I drink, depending on how much I have, my resting heart rate will be like 60 beats per minute overnight. And then you talk about heart rate variability, which is a little bit more complex, but it's essentially like the amount of time between beats. Like, a higher HRV is better than a lower HRV, and my HRV just goes in the tank also. And so it's similar to what I was saying about, like, with the food is put on the back burner. Like, recovery, it's going to prioritize removing this toxin. And so then, if you're lifting, your muscles are not seeing that prioritization because your body's like, I got to get this alcohol out of the system. And so then from there, your recovery's kind of like just behind. And so then you're not going to see, it would take a lot to see a noticeable change. Especially with people starting out, if someone's drinking, 5 to 6 drinks, and then it will mess with that recovery, know. But for me, I don't drink a lot. When I do, I tend to get after it because that's what we're doing, right?
That's my type of guy right there.
Yeah. And so, but that for me isn't gonna ruin me because I'm gonna get back on track and get back to lifting and get back to eating right away.
Well, I think that's the other part too. Like, you wake up the next morning, maybe the next 2 days, you're feeling sluggish, head's probably pounding, probably craving something that's not on your nutrition, diet, and you're probably not working out. So
no, and you
just
wipe out 2 days.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, on the topic of entrepreneurship, what got you started in that at first? I know you said you were listening to a podcast that inspired it, but what gave you, like, the mentality or sparked the interest in entrepreneurship and business?
Yeah, so I've kind of always had it, and I didn't really even know until a few years into doing it. So in high school, I worked at King's on Route 30 and 48.
Oh, nice.
I worked there as a sophomore, and then I worked at Dick's Sporting Goods, like on the apparel floor, my senior year. And outside of that, with playing soccer, I played for a club based out of Monroeville, Allegheny Force Football Club, and the coaches that I had also coached a younger team. And they asked me at one point, like we trained back to back, and they asked me to come to training early to coach the goalkeeper on their team. And so I started just coaching this kid, and I did it for free at the time. I was like 16, 17, did it for a few years, and then once I went to college, once you become a collegiate athlete, it's pretty easy to find people that are willing to, pay you to train their kids. And so for my entire time in college, I was driving back to North for Sales and doing private sessions with goalkeepers. And to me, I never thought anything of it. Like I never considered myself running a business. Like I was always just like, yeah, I can make money doing this. I'm going to do it. And so then, I would have my list of people, sending the messages, booking sessions, and I would do, anywhere from 2 to 4 in a weekend. And that was pretty much my job. I mean, I also coached doing other things, but at one point my dad said to me, he was like, you're an entrepreneur. And I was like, now that you say it, I guess I am. And, getting into, the pandemic, no one's doing anything at the time. I went through my room and I was finding like Pokemon cards and selling them on eBay. I was going through all this stuff and just selling it on OfferUp or Let Go or whatever. And I've just always had that, I don't know, mentality of like, if you want it, you just got to just make it happen. And I don't know, maybe because I saw like the fruits of the labor, I was like, I can definitely do this. And I'm also very much a person where if like you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. And so being like my own boss, because I know I just have that, I'm very motivated by anxiety, put it to you that way. Like I know, like if I've got a month where I'm not bringing in what I'm supposed to be bringing in, like I'm going to work, and so you could say that being an athlete my whole life is what drove that. Maybe it did. I don't know. I think being from, North for Sales and going to East Allegheny and being in a place where for sports in particular, like there's not a lot expected to come from this area.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, I had to grind all the time. I was at the field all the time, just working. And
I think that self-motivation, helps out in entrepreneurship because, like you said, if you're your own boss, no one's telling you to do this stuff, right?
No,
like,
you burn the boats. Your back's against the wall. You got to make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that podcast I mentioned early on, Barbell Shrugged, like I heard that guy saying the same thing. He was like, if I know now, if, I got to go bring in income, like I got to go to work. And I was like, yeah, it never feels good. Like if you get to those points, there's always fear. There's always doubt. Yeah. Like what if it doesn't happen? But I think I would much rather, I heard somebody else say on the mentorship calls that I'm on, he was like, you could have a regular job and get laid off and then what, and so you might as well have a go at doing it for yourself.
I love the honesty with that because most people won't open up about the fear and anxiety with entrepreneurship. Awesome. Because honestly, man, I feel the same way. I think fear is a big motivator. I always think about, George in the future and what it would be like to be like broke. And then that's what gets me up early. It makes me work late. Just growing up, we went to McKeesport, very close to you. We've seen a lot of people that don't make it out and don't really make much of themselves. And you see that every day. And then, you're around some people that may have been more privileged, or you see people that are doing well, you're just like, well, which side do I want to choose? Mm-hmm. And I think it gives you that extra motivation and willpower. So it's like something that either can destroy you and bring you down, or something that can take you to the next level where we're harder to compete with because of that.
Someone else I've heard say, like, people that are afraid to take these risks, they probably don't trust themselves. So you don't have that confidence, or you're not because if it's unclear where you're going to be in say a year, you have to trust yourself that even if it does go bad and you're back into, you'll find a way out. Some people don't have that mentality, so that's a big part of it.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of stuff with East Allegheny. I recreated the Alumni Association back in 2019. We just didn't have one. I mean, it might have existed up until the early 2000s, and it just went defunct. And myself and another classmate of mine, actually, he's a current client of mine, we just went to work and restarted it. And we were going back and setting up different events. We were meeting with the school board, and because I feel like maybe now I'm a bit removed from it because, you know, I was in my early 20s and I had a lot of time, and now I do all kinds of different stuff, so I'm not as involved. Yeah. But the mentality of people, like, I can't do this because I'm from here, used to drive me insane. Because I'm like, I came from here too, man. Like, look at what I'm doing, and I don't want to say it in a way where I'm like,
it's not mean.
I'm super great, you know. But if you want to make it happen, you can do it. And I just tried so hard, and I was more attached to soccer for sure, because we had such a good culture on the high school team whenever I was playing, and now that doesn't really exist anymore, and I can't stand it. And just trying to instill that, whatever that was that we had, that mentality again, and it's an uphill battle a lot of the time. But, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that need to hear about that stuff, and they don't, because they're just stuck in the echo chamber of, like, you're destined to, you know, be doing what you're doing. Yeah, be average, right? Funny you say that. I just made my client Ian, I said to him, I had a call with him yesterday, and I was telling him, you know, when I was in high school, me and my brother used to go run at the field, and we would do these workouts that I was doing at Pitt, and one of us would want to bail, and we would say to each other, have fun being average. And so he said, he was like, I want that on a flag. And so I went and made a flag and put my logo on it, and he just ordered it for his gym.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, that's a hard one to hear, if you're working out. Someone says
Kenophobia. Yeah. That's the fear of being average.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, maybe it's cornophobia or kenophobia, something like that, but that's the fear of being average.
Sounds like you looked that up and maybe have that fear.
Exactly, yeah. I feel the same way. And another quote I really like is, well, that's not a quote, but the one I like is, you know, two types of regret. It's dedication, regret or discipline. Like, you get to pick one of the two. Mm-hmm. So, like, you know, how do you want to be? You know, do you want to just kind of not follow your dreams and regret it, be average, or buckle down and kind of get stuff done?
Yeah, I mean, let it rip. Like, I mean, I've never set a ceiling for myself in anything. And, like, you can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, you just got to go make it happen. But I think people put themselves in they put up these boundaries around themselves thinking that, like, oh, I could never do that. Like, I mean, I have friends that are of that mentality. And I don't understand it. And I'm sure it comes from something when you're growing up, but it's the only limitations that are real are the ones you place on yourself at the end of the day. No one's really actually holding you down. Like, no one's got you in handcuffs. No one's got you in the chain. You know, like, it's like, if you're going to tell yourself I'm not capable of doing it, then you're not going to be capable of doing it, point blank. That's just how it goes. You know, and so it's on the individual to change that mindset. And not everyone's capable of doing it on their own. Like, they've got to have somebody. And if I can be that somebody, then awesome.
What's one piece of advice you would give to the younger generation and kids that have that mentality to help them change?
I was thinking about this on the way out here, actually, and I think it's to lose as often as you possibly can. And I say lose and not fail. And I think they are kind of the same thing, but I think about losing, and I think a lot of people grow up playing sports, right? And, you know, my entire life I was always playing something, and it became soccer for me when I was 16 full time. But I played basketball, I played baseball, and I mean, I've got more second place medals and trophies and stuff than I have anything first place. And I remember when I was younger, like, seeing having other teammates that were on these teams that were winning all the time, and they're like, oh yeah, they're always happy, you know. That's not real, you know. Like, you're going to get kicked in the teeth more often than you're going to win, you know? And so being able to lose all the time and to keep coming back, I mean, if you can do that, you can kind of
get through
do anything, right?
Yeah, there was someone was saying that, like, you know, to be great at anything, you have to be willing to be like a fool at the beginning. 100%. Or, you know, or like a loser but like keep going, because, you know, if you never did anything but you want to accomplish to be really good at it, you have to suck at it first.
Yeah, you got to be willing to be trash at it, and I think that's hard for people to do. It's hard for me to do. I mean,
like you talk about the podcast, even this is what, our 10th episode.
Yeah,
like, still not great at it, you know, but keep grinding.
Speak for yourself.
Sorry, man. George is perfect. I need some work. I know.
No, there's I mean, I even find it hard to do things that I'm not good at. Like, I mean, I do CrossFit now full time. That's something that I found when I was in college, and there's so many different things you have to be good at. And, you know, I was learning how to do, like, double unders with a jump rope, and I was trash at it. Like, I just kept tripping and whipping myself with this rope. And there was a point where I was like, this is stupid. Like, what am I doing? And then I'm like, well, if I want to be good at this, I have to be willing to suck at it before I'm going to be good. And it's just.
When people tend to obviously do stuff they're good at, so they kind of avoid those things, and that's when you really don't grow. You know, if you just stick in your kind of comfort zone, you don't really get anything from it.
Yeah, then you end up in the same spot, and you know, I think in the beginning it probably works out pretty well, but then after a while you get passed up.
For sure.
Yeah, that's some of my favorite advice we've had on the show so far.
I want that flag.
Yeah. I can get one for you.
Speaking of that, so if somebody wants to sign up for Marshall Fitness, buy any apparel or sign up for the coaching, how do they do that?
So my website is marshallfitnesstraining.com. That's where you'll see all of my success stories and, you know, that initial contact me form, a little bit more about me. Apparel is also on there. You know, I have shirts and I have the flag now. And then social media, my Instagram is at @willmarshall_1. My Facebook is willmarshall412. That's where I put out all of my content, so that'd be the easiest way to find me.
All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah,
Will.
awesome. This was great, man. Thanks.
Yeah, I learned a lot,
Appreciate
man.
it.
I'm pretty good at the gym. How about you?
Yeah,
Me too.
Yeah, thanks again, man.
Absolutely.